Today, I'm going to talk about the discomfort and pain you will experience during exercise. So, I'll include a disclaimer. This information is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Consult a healthcare professional for persistent pain. That done? Let's get to it. When you start training physically for the first time, you're going to encounter pain. You could even be training consistently, but simply change how you train or use different exercises. Maybe it's a little bit of discomfort, or it's so intense you wonder if it wouldn't be smarter to just quit. You might think, this doesn't feel right. I did some serious damage there. We can all nod along and say we understand the difference between, in quotes, good pain and bad pain intellectually, but the truth is, you'll only understand the distinction once you've been on the journey long enough to have experienced both. When it comes to pain, the only way to gain that wisdom is the hard way. Hey there, it's me, Core, and you're listening to Exercising Self-Control from Fitness to Flourishing. When my clients tell me something hurts, I sometimes reply, it's going to hurt until it doesn't. I'm not being flippant. That's just the reality of the conditioning taking place. Now, to be clear, this is after I've determined they don't have any pre-existing conditions or injuries. There are positions within exercise movements that seem almost designed to produce the expected discomfort they're experiencing. You can read about how to hold a kettlebell in the rack position. You can learn that the weight pressing into your forearm is temporary discomfort, not serious damage. You can intellectually accept that your body will adapt. But the first time you hold that kettlebell with correct technique, none of that knowledge matters. It hurts. It feels wrong. Your inclination is to shift it to a less painful position. The problem then is you're holding it wrong. The right way will be uncomfortable until it isn't. But that takes conditioning over time. Another common example is front squats. You can be told that the bar across your shoulders will feel uncomfortable, that your wrists will be stretched to an angle that seems unnatural as you drive your elbows to the correct height, and that the pain will diminish with enough training sessions. But when you're under the bar for the first time, your nervous system doesn't care what you understand. It interprets the sensations as counter to your health and safety. This is where most people stop. They read the advice, decide it makes sense, and then quit the moment their brain protests. Now, I'm going to add this caveat here. You don't have to use the exercise that's causing you discomfort or outright pain. There are always substitutions and other ways to train. However, there is no substitute for an exercise that will do exactly what it does. Working with a kettlebell provides different benefits than what you'll get working with dumbbells. A front squat is not the same as a back squat, which isn't the same as a Zercher squat, no matter how similar they all seem. They each provide unique challenges and develop unique benefits. So, you have options. But if you're determined to use that specific exercise, you must deal with the conditioning required to master that movement. The only way to truly understand training discomfort is to experience it repeatedly, to keep choosing to work through the pain. I like to use an analogy from the martial arts, like the kung fu I used to practice. When beginners first start blocking punches, the contact is jarring and painful. They often end up with massive bruising on their forearms. But if they were to wait for every bruise to heal before training again, they wouldn't make progress. It's only showing up, bruises and all, that results in the body adapting to the contact. Over time, the skin, blood vessels, and tissues toughen up until the body can take full contact hits without bruising at all. I remember learning the kettlebell snatch for the first time. I wasn't doing the technique correctly. The bell would slam into my forearm, creating sharp pain that made me want to quit. So I did. About 2 months later, I tried again. Something had sorted itself in my brain, and I got the technique right. I wasn't slamming the bell into my forearm anymore. I was moving with it. Even with the better technique, I still had to build the conditioning and deal with some initial bruising. Anytime I go too long between using kettlebells in my training, I go through this conditioning cycle again. That's the knowledge you can't get from intellectual understanding. It's wisdom you earn through showing up, hurting, and discovering that you didn't break. Once you've lived through enough training discomfort, you develop a feel for what your body is going through. You learn the difference between a deep ache that signals the onset of adaptation and the growth you're seeking, and a sharp pain that signals there's been tissue damage beyond the parameters of a healthy conditioning experience. You learn to recognize the difference between soreness that appears hours later and pain that stops you mid-movement. But you don't learn this by reading or talking about it. You learn this by doing the deed. If you ever experience pain that is acute, sharp, and intense, stop immediately and assess the situation. Is your form correct? Can you modify the movement, the resistance level, or switch to a similar exercise which allows you to continue? If you decide you can't continue, consult with your doctor or other healthcare professional. No one wants an injury. That's the opposite of what we're training for. It almost goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Be smart, avoid injury. But that's not the main point I'm making today. What I'm striving to convey today is this: discomfort and possibly pain is part of the journey. It's not something to avoid or fear. It's something to move through repeatedly until your body learns and your mind understands. And that understanding, it can only come from lived experience. Get in the arena. You're much tougher than you think. That's it for today. Catch you next time.